Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Day one of minicamp is in the books. There'll be 2 more practices this week. And I can tell you that there's a real buzz building out in Ashburn right now. These players, I think it's starting to permeate amongst them as well. We've been feeling this energy from the staff, specifically Ron and Eric Bieniemy, all offseason. But I think the players are really starting to see that this season is going to be different. It feels different. Now, again, things are going to have to fall into place. We're going to have to stay healthy. These are all things that players have talked about. And I can't speak to that enough. Like, we can be as excited as we want to be about some of these players, but they've got to stay healthy. Sam Cosmi has to stay healthy. Sadiq Charles has to stay healthy, right? We could go on and on. The list is very long of guys that need to stay healthy in order to prove that they are legitimate ballers. Benjamin St. Juste needs to stay healthy for, the vast majority of the season. So I'm excited though, man. And we're going to talk about day one of minis. So many guys spoke today. I mean, it's amazing how many players we heard from. And, you don't hear from a lot of these guys very often. So it's always refreshing to hear from a Cole Turner. It's always great to hear from a guy like Derek Force. You're not hearing from some of these guys as often. You're not going to hear from them once we get into training camp and into the regular season. You're going to hear from the same old guys over and over again for the most part. So it's refreshing, like I said, to hear from some of these guys, hear about their offseason, what they worked on, and how they're feeling going into the upcoming season. Another practice, another interception for Emmanuel Forbes. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I think a lot of people are starting to understand that what he did in college wasn't a fluke. And I've stated this. Like, if we were talking just raw ability, fluidity, all that stuff, athleticism, how it looks on the field, yeah, Gonzalez was the better, player in terms of that. But if you're just talking about sheer playmaking ability and just a nose for being around the football and being a playmaker, and we talk about, athleticism and we talk about fluidity and things as if Emmanuel Forbes doesn't have these things. He ran a 4.35 at the combine. It's not like he's a slouch out there. This guy has everything other than size. Again, if he were not 170 pounds, if he were 190 pounds, he would have been the first corner taken in this draft. So, again, I think we got ourselves a hell of a football player. And, again, it's early. Don't want you to get too excited. But it's a lot different in the secondary. The receivers, if I'm hearing a receiver really playing excellent ball right now, if I'm really hearing about a tight end playing good ball right now, if I'm hearing about a safety or a corner playing good ball, I'm excited about that more so than I am particularly the quarterback or the offensive line or defensive lineman, because those positions aren't really getting after it right now. The running backs aren't really getting after it right now. The offense and defensive lines aren't getting after it right now. The quarterback, he's never going to be threatened to be touched in practice, but there's no rush right now. You know what I'm saying? So at best, I can get excited about 7-on-7 action, which is going to really take place in the secondary with the receivers, tight ends, safeties, and corners. So when I hear that Forbes is picking passes off, I don't really give a shit who's throwing them, right? I just know that he's making plays and that confidence is building. And yet another practice, yet another pick by this young fella. And we're going to talk about what each player had to say. Rivera stepped up to the podium first, so we'll talk about what he had to say. Really, nothing major from Ron with this particular presser going into the first day of the minicamp, the vet minicamp. This is mandatory. That's why Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Charles Leno Jr. were all in attendance, guys that weren't there last week when it was such a big deal, right? Or 2 weeks ago, rather, when it was such a big deal. At the end of the day, Ron, spoke about those veterans that joined the rest of the team and wanted to see them jump in there seamlessly. Sounds like all of those guys did exactly that for the most part. Chase said he feels fantastic, feels like he's himself again, which is a great news. We'll get to him a little bit later on. in this video. But Ron talked about Chase, and I think I made this clear when I spoke about this last week when I said Chase is pretty much as good as gone. I said, and there were some caveats that I threw in there. I said, unless this happens, right? And I also mentioned this. Ron was not happy with him last year, but Ron is willing to mend fences. He's willing to let bygones be bygones. I've already said if it were up to Jack's done with him. And mentally, Jack's moved on. Jack would have been perfectly fine if Ron would have said, we're not playing Chase, we're playing James Smith-Williams. Jack's would have been, all right, cool. It's whatever. You know what I mean? He's not tripping. But, Ron is like, no. I understand what Chase can mean for this team if he's back to what he was in his rookie season. And Chase talked about all the motivation. We'll get to that. So it was good to hear Ron talk about Chase, and hoping that he looks good out there and all of those things. And, there was even a question thrown out there. I think it was Ben Standig who asked, is Chase the starter? What kind of a question? And he knew it was a dumb question, but he felt the need to ask it, just for the sake of making sure that there was clarity there. And Ron's like, yeah, what kind of question is that? We're going to start James Smith-Williams? What are we going to start the rookie out there? KJ Henry? What are you looking at? F.A. Obata's going to start? No way. No, it's Chase Young. So, he talked about that. I think the thing that's going to get the most run from what he said today is, that there's a real quarterback competition, and he's saying all the right things, right? So the 2 times Ron has demonstratively denounced any quarterback competition, his first year here with Dwayne and last year with Carson Wentz, the 2 times he's done it, it went horribly wrong, okay? It went as sideways as it could possibly go in both situations. One, he had to end up cutting the player before the season was done. And the other situation, he ended up having to bench that quarterback. So, and then brought him back in, and then it turned out to be the fatal blow that, stifled this team's chances of making the postseason. So it went terribly. So, the 1 year where he actually made it seem as if there was a competition when there really wasn't, that one didn't work very well either, but it wasn't because of anything with the competition. Guy got hurt in the first game, 2 series in. However, I think Ron is going to stick to the script, which is, hey, it's a competition. We're going to let these guys battle it out. Jacoby's pushing Sam to the limit. Sam's going to have to earn it. He's really going to have to show what he's made of in those joint practices against the Baltimore Ravens. He's going to stick to that script up until we get to that point. Sam proves that, and Ron did say in this same presser, in the same breath, that he was talking about hyping up Jacoby, and we're talking about Jacoby just as much as we're talking about Sam. No, you're not. But if that's what you want to tell yourself, go right ahead, be my guest. But, he also said if Sam does all of the things that he needs to do, then he'll be QB1, right? But he said there's no guarantee that because he starts the offseason as QB1, he ends it as QB1. That's facts, but it's not happening here. I can tell you right now. They didn't go out and get Jacoby Brisset. And Ron is staking his claim here in Washington on Jacoby Brisset. That's not what he's doing. We've already established this. I don't need to get into that. But he's saying all the right things to facilitate a quarterback battle and competition. But really, we know this is Sam's job, okay? Has been since the end of last season, week 18, after the Cowboys game, and it is now. And it's going to be when we get to camp, and it's going to be when we get to week 1. Barring some type of catastrophe, that's going to happen. But I think that's the thing that's going to get the most run from Ron. He really didn't say much. He did mention Sadiq Charles. Sadiq was brought up about what's different this year. Why is Sadiq getting an opportunity this year going to be different than past years? And Ron pretty much said, look, he's getting the first crack. This is the first time Sadiq Charles has gone into an offseason where he's been the guy at a position. I'm thinking about his rookie season. I thought they were giving him the opportunity to play left tackle that rookie season. I'm not quite sure about that, but I feel really confident that they were going into that rookie season with Sadiq Charles kind of penciled in as the guy. And he had to go out and earn it, and he didn't, injuries really derailed that rookie season. But Ron said he's the guy, and I can tell you something else that's different. EB has instilled confidence in Sadiq Charles. And I already told you there's a relationship there that predated EB's arrival here. Whatever that relationship was, however it was established, it was already formed by the time EB had that presser. They were already talking about, do you got my number and all this stuff? Like, I'm thinking it probably happened through the draft process, if I had to guess. But that's nor here nor there. We'll see if he can stay healthy, number one, and number two, if he can hold up his end of the bargain, perform at a high enough level to keep guys like Chris Paul away from snatching that position from him. But that was essentially Ron in a nutshell. Jacoby Brissett spoke. Really nothing there. He talked about competition. He's like, I mean, why else would I be here? If I didn't see myself as a starter, why am I doing this, right? So he's saying, again, he's a really good teammate, really good dude. He's going to say all the right things. And nothing really there to take away from Jacoby Brissett's presser. Daron Payne, let me start by saying this, and I know I'd say this all the time about Daron, but I'm proud of him, first and foremost. I want to say he's come a long way. Him and Montez Sweat, who we haven't heard from this offseason yet, but they've made so many strides, all right, with their ability to address the media. You can tell he doesn't like it. He's uncomfortable, but he's gotten better and better at it. And he still doesn't like it. And you can tell because at the very end, when it was over, most guys say, hey, thanks. Or, all right, guys, you have a good one. He just walked off like, okay, I'm done with this shit. I'm out of here, But he's getting better. And they're not one-word answers. They're not three-word sentences to answer a question. He's actually giving thoughtful answers. You ask the right question, you'll actually get, 3 or 4 sentences out of him. But all in all, he set goals for himself. I like his approach. I like his demeanor. First of all, he just loves ball. And he showed us that last year. He talked about that last year. He talked the talk, then he walked the walk. And he's talking that same talk this year. He's like, I set the goal for 13 sacks last year. And that's a lofty goal for a dude who never had more than, 6 sacks in a season. He set the goal last year at 13, and he just fell short at 11 and a half. I mean, he was fantastic last year. And I've got something that I want to bring up to you guys. I'm going to save it for Thursday. It really pissed me off seeing this. It's more disrespect. And this is the kind of disrespect I can't let slide. Okay, I draw a line in the sand with some of the disrespect because, some of it just rolls down my back. Adam Rank has us going 5-12. I don't care about Adam Rank. I don't care that he's right in line with everybody else that thinks we're going to stink, right? That disrespect doesn't bother me. The disrespect that bothers me is the kind that comes at the expense of these players because they play on a team that hasn't had success. And I got to check that shit at the front door. So we're going to talk about that on Thursday night. But it's good to hear from Daron. He said he's setting the goal at 13 sacks this coming season. And that was the goal he set for himself last year. And he's going to try to hit it this year. And I got no doubts that he's going to have an opportunity, especially if Chase comes back and is playing with any kind of relentlessness. Just the sheer depth of the line now, if guys are healthy, with Federian Mathis being back in the mix, giving them a little bit of a blow. Obviously, we love what John Ridgway brought to the table. I think our defensive line is as stout as it gets. You add in KJ Henry this year, and with Chase back, I think this is a really formidable group, man. And you got a nice little 8-man rotation that we could potentially be putting on the field when you throw in F.A. Obata and James Smith-Williams to the mix. You're talking about a 9-man rotation there that I think is going to challenge and rival the rest of the league is for the best, among the best in football. So glad to hear that Daron Payne is locked in. And I think coming off of what he did last year, he keeps saying the same thing. And I love this. He said it was so much fun making plays last year. I just want to do that again. Hey, I'm all here for it. I'm all for it. I want to see it again. It was fun watching you make the plays that you made a season ago. Another guy that spoke, and this was a very anticipated, presser, was Chase Young, right? Haven't really heard from him since the end of last season. And, obviously he didn't attend OTAs or, the voluntary OTAs a couple weeks ago, and that was a big, stink. A lot of people, you know what? Somebody sent me, and because I'm not on socials like a lot of you are, so I appreciate when you guys send me stuff like this because I'm pretty much not in the know with a lot of this stuff because I'm not perusing IG and on Twitter and all of these different social media sites. I'm not on TikTok or any of that crap. So you guys have to be my eyes and ears out there in the social media streets. So somebody sent me a clip of Chase. And this is beautiful for me because this is the thing. When it comes to Chase Young, and a lot of people get bent out of shape about him not being there, what matters to you more? That he is appearing to be a leader and that he's there and that he's participating in stuff that ultimately is probably ancillary for a lot of these dudes that have been there for many years, especially with the defensive side of the football where they're not really implementing much new material. They are, and Ron did say we are doing things differently because of EB, and there are certain things that are being structured differently. And so, being there will help that learning curve. And I get all of that. But which one matters to you most? Him being at OTAs and being a part of the team and all of that good stuff and good vibes for everyone, or him actually being better, right? Him actually getting better, learning from someone that is one of the best to ever do it in NFL history in terms of bagging quarterbacks. What do you care about more? Because I don't give a damn about Chase showing up for OTAs and being a part of the team camaraderie and learning some things that he's going to learn again anyway because he's going to be there like he is this week, and he's going to be there again when training camp starts, and they're going to be talking about the same shit over again. Ron even said, we're going to be talking about the same shit over again when training camp starts, right? So you rather him be there and let's say have 5 sacks, because he's missing out on working with Von Miller, or you want him to work out with Von Miller and come back and get 11.5 sacks. Now, again, that him working with Von Miller may not be the difference between 5 and 11 sacks, but it can't hurt working with Von Miller. That's for damn sure. Could he have worked with Von Miller at a different time when it doesn't, conflict with, camp? Yeah, sure. OTAs, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. But he's working on somebody else's schedule, right? If Von is doing it this time, then I'm working with Von. I don't know when it was. It could have not been during OTAs, whatever the case may be. It's just good to see him working with Von Miller, period. All right. There was a lot of scuttlebutt last year about him potentially having missed, and having a setback because he was at Von Miller's passing academy, pass rushing academy. That wasn't the case last year. He wasn't there. As you can see, he was not in any shape to be out there running around last year. He's, he feels like he's back now, and he said he feels 100%. And he said, he's been hearing everything. Chase showed me last year that he's sensitive. Okay. A lot of these dudes try to come off as, oh, I ain't paying attention. And most of these young boys are on social media. They hear everything. They try to act like they don't hear the shit, but they hear it. Okay. And so he said, yeah, I'm putting all of that stuff in my back pocket. So he knows what's being said. There were a lot of questions lobbed at him about, was he disappointed in the 5th-year option not being picked up? And, he was disappointed, you could tell, but I'm not going to let you see me sweat. I'm not going to let you see me tripping about that. Nah, I'm good. I get it. It's a business decision. And, I just got to go out there and prove what I know I'm fully capable of. Because he knows this actually could be beneficial for him. Because instead of them having to drag this out another year, right, he can get to the bag quicker. If he balls this year, they got to make a decision. And even if that decision is franchise tag, it's going to be more than the $17 million that they were going to have to pay him had they picked up the 5th-year option. So it's going to be more expensive for them if they decide to come back to Chase next year, whether it's with a long-term deal or it's with the franchise tag. It's more than the 17 that they were going to have to pay him. So to him, he's probably saying, I see this as an opportunity. They gave me a chance to get to the bag quicker. And if he can find a way to get to the long-term bag somehow, some way, he's going to get to the long-term bag again quicker. Again, when you're not a first-round pick, the downside to being a non-first-round pick is that you don't make any real money in that first contract. You're not making that real bread. First-rounders make real money in that first contract. You're not a first-round pick. You're not making real life-changing bread, right? Even the first-rounders still aren't making, true life-changing money. They're making some good money, though. Don't get it twisted. But they're not making life-changing money. But Anybody after the first round, they're not making really good money because you got to pay back all the people that fronted you bread. You got to pay your agent. You got to do all of this stuff. Your money's going in all these different directions. By the time that first contract is done, you need more bread, right? So in the case of Chase Young, the upside of not being a first round pick is you get back to the bag quicker. Like Terry got to that bag faster. AJ Brown got to the bag faster than a guy that went in the first round, because the team has that option to pick up the 5th year and they can wait and push out your negotiation for another year. You can't do that with a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick. So this kind of benefits Chase if he's able to take advantage of the opportunity that's been presented to him. So he's saying all the right things, but again, talk is cheap at this point. Want to see action. We'll see what he's able to do. But I love the fact that he's like, bro, I'm 100%. I'm only wearing the brace because it's just a mental thing right now. You know, I know how bad I tore up my knee. So I'm out here practicing and running around. I'm going to just keep this thing on. Eventually, I think he's going to shed that brace. But even if he doesn't, if he's more comfortable with that brace being on, so be it. Whatever. As long. And he even talked about explosiveness. He talked about what's the difference between finishing and leaving meat on the bone. Essentially, Jack Del Rio has talked about finishing. That's been the mantra, that motto. You know, he talked about Daron Payne finishing last year. And how Montez Sweat needs to finish this year. You know, Chase needs to finish. That 1.5 sacks tells you all you need to know. He needs to finish. And he said it's the burst. It's that burst. Once you beat your man, closing the deal and getting to the quarterback. He's not wrong. But first, you got to beat your man. And I'm not seeing a ton of that from Chase Young initially. And that's what we got to start with is he's skipping a whole part that's really important, which is getting past that tackle first. He's not doing that. All right, so get past the tackle, then finish, then get to the quarterback. So, again, love everything that he said, but we about that action, boss. And he said, hey, I feel fantastic. Go watch the film from practice today. You'll know I'm back. So we'll see. All right, we'll be the judge of that when the time comes. But it's good to hear from him. Jamin Davis talked about, you know, dealing with the injury that he's been dealing with and how that slowed him down this offseason. Remember, and we didn't really know how significant that injury was. Remember, he missed the final game of the season versus Dallas. Once we were eliminated mathematically from the playoffs the week prior against the Browns, they went ahead, put him on IR, ended his season. And I just thought, you know, it's week 18. It's meaningless. If you got anything that's nagging you that you've been dealing with, those guys don't need to play in week 18. I just figured that's what it was. I didn't realize that was a significant injury and that was something that was really going to last into next offseason. And here we are into June, and he's still trying to get over something that happened last December. You know what I'm saying? Into January, well, you know, maybe the case may be. But he's trying to work his way back. He's not there yet, but you know, this is the time. If somebody's going to be banged up or you're going to be dealing with something, now's the time. Because once we get to July and training camp, you don't want to be missing days. You don't want to be missing practices. You don't want to be, you know, missing opportunities. You don't want to miss the joint practice with the Ravens or the preseason games if you're supposed to be out there. You want all of those reps. So he's just talking about getting comfortable with his surroundings. He talked about the linebacker position. He talked about Khaleke Hudson playing ball and how he's emerging. And he talked about, you know, establishing this relationship with, you know, one of the things was him and Cole Holcomb had become the best of friends. And so that was a bit of a change for him. But he's like, yo, Cody Barton is a country boy like myself. So we've, you know, built a little bit of a rapport and a bond. And so we're starting to gel a little bit. Now they got to get that, you know, bond. Because I think with, you know, players, specifically on the defensive side in particular, when you got to trust the guy next to you, only on the offensive line is that really the case. Receivers kind of do their own thing. They do work in unison. But, you know, if a guy's running a route on the backside of a play and his job is to take coverage away, he's just got to do his job individually. You do your job individually. I do my job. If it's man-to-man coverage, all of that kind of goes out the window. I just got to beat my man, right? Whereas offensive linemen need to be working in unison. They run a twist in a stunt. You got to pass it off and be able to work as one. Defensively, though, it's like 11 guys have to be locked in together. And so Especially, when you're working next to a player, you've got to be a lot more comfortable with that guy. Know that you can trust him to do his job. And so I think the off the field relationship is a little bit more of a must defensively than it is offensively, if that makes sense to you. At least stands for the offensive line on the offensive side, because the offensive line needs to be kind of locked in together as well. But he talked about forging that relationship with Cody Barton, and and he's hoping that relationship will be forged by the time he's healthy and he can get out there, and then they can start to play ball, communicate with each other, and start playing well. Cole Turner, it was so good to hear from Cole Turner, man. I got two guys in particular right now that I am really fixated on that nobody's really talking about. I think people are talking about Cole Turner. So I don't want to say nobody's talking about this one in particular, but there's another guy that I'm going to talk about at the very end of this show that I really think could have a big year that nobody's really talking about. He's kind of the forgotten man, but we'll double back to him. But I want to talk about Cole Turner because he's transformed his body. He talked about how tough a go of it his rookie season was. He said, man, it was like a never-ending process last year. We went from the end of the college football season straight into preparing for the combine. He said the combine was a nightmare. You get out of the combine, you got all these meetings with clubs. As soon as you go from that, it's the draft. You get drafted. You come in for rookie minis right away. Then it's, OTAs. Then it's, vet minicamp. You're here for all of that. Then you finally get to exhale, and before you know it, boom, training camp is here. And he's like, my head was spinning. I was having to learn all this stuff. It was a grind. He said, I enjoyed it. And then I get injured, and it's my hamstring, and I'm rushing to get back because I want to help this team. And it made it worse, and I never really fully healed, And so he's like, I worked on individual muscle groups this year, including my hamstring. I feel so much better. He's like, so much so, I'm eating better. He said, I cut body fat. And then they asked him specifically, well, how much body fat did you cut? And he's like, I was 14% last year. I'm 9%. Do you understand how significant 5% body fat is? What? To be under 10% body fat is tremendous, let alone cutting 5 of it, at one time. So he's definitely locked in, and he's like, I wanted to be more of a separator. I want to be out here running routes like a wide receiver. I feel like that's what I can bring to the table. And so I feel like I'm in that position now. I feel better than ever before. And I'm really excited for Cole Turner this year, especially in the midst of losing Amani Rodgers, who was the one guy that we looked at as the athletic dynamo. Don't sell Cole Turner short. I mean, we drafted him in the 5th round. We were excited about him last year because of that same reason. We thought he was going to be the athletic freak that this position group, specifically at tight end, was lacking. And then we saw Amani Rodgers. We fell in love with him and forgot about Cole Turner because he really didn't play last year. Well, Turner's back. Hopefully he stays healthy. But he's like, EB's got us running all kinds of routes. And I'm loving this. He's loving it. And so I'm excited about, this position in particular. But, Cole Turner getting this opportunity. I think the tight end position is going to surprise a lot of you. I'm just going to say that. And here's another reason I feel that way. Tress Way spoke today. Tress he's got a job waiting for him as a member of the media wherever he wants. If he wants to do it locally, if he wants to slide into like a Santana Moss, Logan Paulson type of role with the team, that's there for him. If he wants to think bigger, because I think his personality lends itself to him being on a national stage. He can go ESPN, he can go Fox, CBS Sports, he can go wherever he wants, honestly speaking. If he wants to do his own thing and have his own channel on YouTube, that's going to move the needle like a Pat McAfee, as an ex-special teamer. He's got that type of personality now. He's not as in your face as Pat McAfee, so he's not going to appeal to that kind of a crowd, but he's a funny dude. He gets it. And the stories that he tells, second to none. And he told a couple of stories about camp. One in particular was with Jonathan Allen and how, the offense was shredding the defense one day in practice a couple weeks ago. and John Allen, stopped practice and he stood up and he told the offense, because they were getting rah-rah, he's like, y'all do know we not rushing the quarterback, right? All right, just letting y'all know. So y'all can pipe down with all of that nonsense y'all over there talking about. And then and then practice resumed. So he's like, even with, no pads being on, his helmets and shells, that's it. It's no physicality. He still had to let the offense know that it ain't really that type of party for real. Y'all only getting off because we can't get after y'all. So he's like, he couldn't even let them have it that one day. You know what I mean? And then he was telling another story about how Sam is really forming a bond with Logan Thomas. He's like, he's throwing the ball up to Logan and letting him get it. This is what the game's been missing in this offense, specifically at the tight end position, specifically when we get into the red zone, but even on third downs, when you just need 5 yards and you got a big 6'6", 6'7" target like Logan Thomas, why aren't you throwing him the football? This is the problem we had last year with Scott Turner in situational awareness. Sam seems to get it. He's giving, how many times have we seen clips on social media of Sam throwing the ball to Logan Thomas, right? I've seen plenty. So he's talking about that connection, and he's saying, man, this is going to be fun. So Sam Cosmi spoke. I told you we heard from a lot of guys. Sam spoke, and he said, look, I kind of knew going into the offseason that there was probably going to be a positional switch for me. I told Coach, and he had to specify because he was asked, what was it, EB? Or was it Ron? Or who was it? He's like, no, it was Ron. I told Coach, wherever you need me, that's where I'll play. Wherever you feel like I can best be utilized and help this team, that's where I'll be, and I'll be the best player I can possibly be at that position. And obviously guard is where they have him. And I think he can be a Brandon Sheriff type of guy. He's just got to stay healthy. I think he's got that kind of potential. He's a physical guy. He talked about the difference between guard and tackle, and he said the biggest difference is the immediate contact. When you're a tackle and you set, and it's a pass set, you're already in your stance. You get out of your stance, you kick slide, and there's at least 4 or 5 yards of space between you and that pass rusher before he actually initiates contact, or you initiate contact, depending on how the play goes. But there's still this window before contact actually takes place, whereas at guard, it's immediate contact. As soon as the ball snap, that defensive tackle, that linebacker, whomever, that, blitzer, defensive tackle specifically, they're contacting you right away. And you got to be ready to anchor down, be physical from the word go. And so he's like, that's the biggest change. But he's like, I can still play tackle if they need me to. You can tell a part of him still wants to play tackle, but he's like, yo, I'll do whatever it takes to get on the field and be able to help this team. I also love that he was talking about Nick Gates at center. He's like, yo, Nick Gates is a dog. All right, I don't know if y'all get it, but he's not a regular dog. He's a big dog. He's like, he got the long hair flowing, no shirt on, or shirt, kind of showing the belly. He's like, he's out here barking orders, talking shit. So he's like, I'm loving Nick Gates right next to me, man. So this revamped offensive line, I think, is going to do wonders for us. And if we can find the right 5 guys that can gel and play as one in unison, I've already told you, I think the sky's the limit for this offense. So Sam seems to be excited about the group. He was excited to get Charles Leno back in the mix today. And so, the 5 guys that we think are going to have a chance to play and start for this team, we're finally there all at the same time, with Leno finally being there. So now they can get a feel for one another and start that process of them starting to gel and be cohesive together. Derek Forrest spoke, and I just love Derek Forrest. I love his energy. He's so vibrant, and he's very descriptive. And I think he's another one of these dudes that, like Benjamin St. Juste, like Terry McLaurin, who is very thoughtful, and he definitely answers everything with this. It's almost like he thinks about everything, and he's not afraid to say how he feels. A lot of guys, they're either short with you because they don't want to say anything wrong, or they don't want to tell you too much. I think Terry, Benjamin St. Juste, and Derek Forrest are 3 guys in particular that I will single out and say that they'll tell you exactly how they feel. even if it goes against the grain and it's not something you're used to hearing a player say, like for instance, last year, Benjamin St. Juste was like, yeah, the owner, we could use some new ownership essentially. He was like, yeah, this ownership is kind of tripping. He didn't say that, but he insinuated that. What player is doing that? Most guys aren't doing that. When we hear from Terry will tell you, like, we got to be better. We got to do this. We got to do that. Especially me, myself. I got to be better here, here, and here. And you don't get a lot of that from players, right? And I feel like, Derek Forrest is the same type of guy. Like, for instance, one of the first answers he gave was, are you more comfortable this year than you were? Like, before the guy could even finish, he was like, yeah, most definitely. I'm way more comfortable. I'm established now. I feel like I can be a vocal leader in this locker room now. I can tell guys how I feel now, as opposed to last year where I was just trying to fit in, and try to do my job and find a way to get onto the field. Now I feel like I can be a little bit more vocal. So he's already saying, look, I'm ready to take on more of a leadership role. And he was talking about the young guys. He said, I've never, and it's funny because this is only his third year in the league, right? But he's like, I've never seen a group of rookies come in. So he said this like he's a 7-year vet, right? And this is his 6th year seeing rookies come in. This is his 2nd year seeing rookies come in. 3 years ago, he was a rookie himself, but he still is a guy now that is considered a veteran because he's been through this now. This is his 3rd offseason. He said, look, this is the most savvy group of rookies I've ever seen. These boys come in and they're jumping into the water in the deep end. They're not in here, dipping their toe in the water and trying to figure out how cold it is and if they want to jump in. These boys are jumping in the deep end and they are thriving out there. He's like, Quan Martin, he gets it. He's like, yo, this Emmanuel Forbes kid is crazy. Had another pick today. So I think he realizes that, this secondary has a chance to be really special. He even joked about Cam Curl's haircut. And he said they were joking about his haircut. And I think he said they called him like Cameron Curlington because of his haircut. So he said Curl said he's going to try to grow it back, but we'll see what happens. But you can see that bond, that unity that's being forged with these players. And you can see that there's an excitement, a buzz. And I think these young boys are going to come in and contribute. Like, the guy that I want to talk about right now is a guy that I don't think we've talked about enough this offseason. And I think he's gotten lost in all of this because, think about it, he was Quan Martin last year, right? Percy Butler was Quan Martin last year. Remember, when Percy Butler was drafted last year in the 4th round, we all looked at him as a guy that was going to come in and immediately play, right? And so Percy Butler came in with all this fanfare. We were excited about his speed. He lit up the combine from a speed perspective. And there was so much that he could come in and do. He could play the slot. He could play single high free safety. He was physical. You could use him as a blitzer. There was so many things that, they talked about position flex and all of this stuff. And ultimately, they ended up putting Bobby McCain in the nickel. When push came to shove, they ran out of options. They stuck Bobby McCain in there. And he never really saw the field until week 18, really, defensively. I mean, there were other games where he played, but he wasn't impactful. And he even said this, and I made mention of this last week when we talked about, Emmanuel Forbes being put inside and outside and them moving him around to put more on his plate so that he could become more diverse and understand more of the defense, because when you can see it from the outside and the inside, it makes you smarter as a football player. I said, that's great, and I understand what you're doing, and it's all fine and dandy. However, sometimes overloading a player can slow them down. Now, again, I do think there's a benefit to putting a lot on a player's plate to see what they can process, because some guys process it a lot faster and quicker than others. Some guys are going home and they're just junkies and they're putting in work. And so they're able to digest all of that stuff faster than other players. But, and there's only one way to find out, by giving them all of that material and seeing what they do with it. But for some guys, it bogs them down. It did it to Jamin Davis. And Percy Butler said, hey, they came in here and they hit me with so much. They put me here, they put me there, they put me there, they put me there. He said, I wasn't able to go out and worry about what the offense was doing. I was so worried about what I had to do that it was slowing me down. Now, he said it helped me because it helped me grow as a player, and it forced me to become a student of the game. However, it slowed me down last year, and I thought I should have been between the white lines more, but I wasn't ready. He said, I'm ready now. I know the defense more. He had a pick last week against Sam Howell in red zone that a lot of people were talking about, where he jumped the route, and he's like, I'm more savvy now. And he broke that play down. He's like, I saw the drag. I saw the over route, but I never looked at it. And I said, I'm going to bait him. He said, last year, I'd have been 8 yards deep in the end zone. I wouldn't have even been close to making that play. I'd have got too much depth. This year, I'm smarter. I can midpoint that play, right? I don't have to get all that depth. What am I getting that far back into the end zone for? They just need to cross that thick white line. Why am I back here, damn near by the goalpost? How's that going to help us? So I can midpoint that, take that away in the back of the end zone, but still be close enough at the front of the end zone that if something goes down there, I can make a play. And what do you know? He said, I was baiting him, and I didn't even look at that over route. As soon as he did, I got one, and he took it. So he's like, the name of the game is takeaways. We didn't have enough of them last year. I want to be a part of the solution. I want to be a part of these guys making plays. Look out for Percy Butler. He could have a default type of jump in year 2. A lot of people are just going straight to Quan Martin, and Quan Martin might be fantastic, and he may keep Percy Butler off the field. But a lot of times with young guys, they generally we build them up because he's a second round pick, and Percy Butler may come in here and say, look, I've been in the scheme now for 2 years. I understand what's being asked of me. I'm ready to contribute. And he may take Quan Martin and make him a special teamer this year. All right. Now, I think Quan Martin's a really smart football player. They're going to give him first crack at that opportunity to be on the field. But don't sleep on Percival Butler. I'm just telling you right now, he's dialed in and he's given off Defoe vibes from last year. He's giving me Defoe vibes from last year. That's all I'm going to say. But the beauty of this is, look at all of this depth, all of this speed, all of this talent we got in the back end. If we can figure out how to maximize this, I'm telling y'all right now, we got a chance to be really nasty. I'm telling you. So he's the other guy. Him and Cole Turner are the two guys that I'm kind of fixated on right now because there is an opportunity. There's a void that was left by Amani Rodgers' injury. And I look, there's still a TE1 on this team. His name is Logan Thomas. Some of you don't love that, but that's the way it is. But there's a void there, I feel like, for TE2 in terms of pass catching ability. Because TE2 on the depth chart is going to be, John Bates. But if you're talking about catching the football, I think there's a void there now with Amani Rodgers being out that I think Cole Turner is going to have an opportunity to fill. And as far as, Percival Butler goes, he made his mark on special teams last year. He's still going to be a core special teamer. But I wouldn't be shocked if, Quan Martin, starts a little slow and, they turn to Percy Butler and he's ready and he takes an opportunity and he doesn't give it back. I wouldn't be shocked. That's the kind of competitiveness that we've created. This culture that we've created, it's a beautiful one that really focuses in on competition. It highlights competition and, iron sharpens iron. We're trying to put the best dudes out on the field. And one week it could be, Percival Butler. The next week it could be, Quan Martin. It could be the same game. Who knows? It's just good to know that we got a lot of dudes that if one guy goes down, we got another guy that can step in. And it's been a long time since we've been able to say that specifically in the secondary. So the buzz is building. You can feel it. There's a different vibe right now around this football team. We just got to continue to build on it. And the most important thing is we just got to stay healthy. We do that, I think we're going to be really dangerous. But I digress. Anyway, that's recapping, day one, hearing from all the fellas. I told you the thing I really focus in on this time of the year is what players say and less about what they do. Because, again, no pads are on right now. So hearing what is going on, behind closed doors, the energy that's starting to permeate the building, I think all of those things are really, really intriguing right now with this football team. So, again, it's fueling my it's fueling my optimism, and they keep doing this to me, and I'm gonna start talking reckless. I don't want to do that. I got to make sure I stay level-headed, okay? Because you know how I feel about Sam. And because I feel the way that I do about Sam, it's going to lead me to be a little bit even more optimistic than I have been in past years. So, again, we'll see what happens. But this feels different. This feels different. Can't stress that enough. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care.
LouieTeeNetwork.